Hey, Vincent.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. What's new?
Uh,
I mean, what isn't new?
yeah, world's upside down.
It is insane. I was just telling a friend, I was like, if somebody told me last year this time that we would all be stuck in our houses for 6 months and that people would be on the streets on about police brutality, I'd be like, you're crazy.
Right.
And I'm so happy about the second part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and it's just been really interesting. It's just, we're thinking so much about like how sustainable this is, like how,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just been so interesting. We're working around the country on these different police accountability proposals and just, it's wild. Like they're doing things like introducing databases of bad cops, but then they're not lifting the secrecy on police disciplinary records. So it's like, what are you filling your database with? Like,
Yeah, that's just like cosmetic. Like they're trying to make it just
yeah.
cosmetic paint. It's like painting the street.
Totally. Oh, wait. I mean, it's like their way. So it's just been, we're trying to get into all these state houses now to be like, you can't do this if you're not doing like a 50A repeal?
Right, right, right. Totally, totally.
But it's just, but it's, I mean, you saw Colorado got rid of qualified immunity basically.
I did see that. I did see that. Yeah, yeah. No, it's exciting. It's
It was, and a really interesting element of the law, I don't know if you saw, was that 5% of the settlement has to come out of the cop's pocket,
I did see that, which is
which I loved.
I love it. Yeah.
Like they've
Definitely,
skin
you
in
know.
the game. Like they might think twice. I don't know.
Hopefully, it's like it's certainly going to be a vast improvement over what's happening now.
I
So,
mean,
you know,
I mean, honestly, we have to scrap the whole thing and start over, but it's,
yeah, yeah, exactly,
it's
exactly.
where we're at. But how is your work going? What have you been up to?
It's good. It's good. I've been busy, doing a lot of like trainings and presentations, and we're filing an amicus brief in this in the 99 minutes dirty retroactivity case. So
Wow,
I've been working on that.
it's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, we're filing that in a couple weeks. And trying to just kind of sort through stuff for the upcoming academic year
Right.
and get like everything's on on
Right.
everything's remote, so like we can't do any real programming that's not going to be remote. So we're trying to figure out like what we want to do in that way, and then been working with these advocates. We do some work around like parole and parole, like trying to change the way the parole system operates in New York State. So we've been doing some work there and advocacy there.
Oh, awesome.
Well, that's been
Like the
like
Michelle Lewin and all.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, with Dave George, Michelle
Dave
Lewin,
George.
Jose, and all that. Yeah, that whole crew. So we've been kind of working with them for the last few months, especially kind of trying to get people out of harm's way with COVID.
Well,
Um,
that's what we've been doing, and it's like Cuomo is. It's so ridiculous. It's
he's
so ridiculous.
Um,
yeah.
ex excuse,
Hello.
yes, hi, this is the captioner, Renata Reed, you see it there? Oh, I should have put captioner. I'm just waiting, Juanita Anderson, I believe, is the host. She has to assign me as the captioner. So just so you know, I'm waiting for her and I'm here and I guess she's not here yet, right?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Tahani from
Hi.
Michigan. Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Vincent.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
we're waiting for Karen. Karen is on. We'll just wait for Juanita to host.
Okay.
Rebecca, I was really happy to see Christina coming on board. That's
I'm
fantastic.
so excited. I can't even, there are no words. Like we are so ready. We're
Yeah,
so excited about
yeah.
this. I
She's,
mean,
she's
it's
like,
really,
she's like the perfect person for that job.
she's going to be amazing. I'm so thrilled, because I've been sort of forever been trying to move our brand from actual innocence to presumption of innocence,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
um, which is, by the way, the first question I'm going to turn to you around tonight, but just sort of, yeah, but, and that would just open up everything for us, right? We could get into so much more if we kind of push past that kind of tight actual innocence brand, which I've always thought is, you know, we don't have to be so literal.
Yeah.
So, and I'm pretty sure she'll be embracing that. So
Completely.
so excited.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. Have you worked closely with her on other things?
Yeah, she and I worked together for like 6 or 7 years at LDF.
Right.
Yeah, she was my yeah, she ran the when LDF had practice groups, she ran a criminal justice group, which I was part of. So she was my direct supervisor, and then she became then the practice group walls kind of were taken down, and she was, I guess, she was litigation director for a little while while I was there before I left. So yes, I worked with her for really closely for a long time.
Amazing.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, we're counting the minutes.
Yeah.
We actually cannot wait. So it's going to be great. Yeah, it's thrilling. I mean, I was just, you know, reading about her work on Buck too, which was just extraordinary, and it's just thrilling.
Yeah, that's great. It's wonderful.
Yep. So it'll be good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think Yusuf is just a little bit going to be joining us a little bit later tonight. So I think I'm going to help moderate, which is sad for everyone involved, but we'll see how that goes.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you, Rebecca. We just have some people who are having trouble with the link, so we're helping them to get on.
Great.
So welcome, everyone. I think we can, let me just yes?
This is the captioner talking. Would you be able to assign me as the captioner, please?
Yes, I've spoken to Ruben, and let me just double check on that. Be right back.
Sure. I can show you how to do it if you want.
Yeah, well, hi, this is Ruben. Yeah, if you don't mind walking me through that, I'm happy to assign you.
Sure. Just go to where participants is.
Mm-hmm.
Next to my name, Renata Reed Captioner, where it says more, it says assign captioner. And so just click that and I'll take it from there.
Unfortunately, that is not an option over here. I do.
It should be under participants.
Yeah, I'm next to your name, and but there isn't an option under more.
Oh boy. Yes. There isn't. Oh boy. There should be. Huh.
No, I can see make host, make co-host, allow record, rename, and put in waiting room. Nothing about captioner.
Yeah, it always does say that. Maybe you haven't uploaded the latest Zoom. So before I uploaded the latest Zoom, I had it. So let me see if I can try another way. I can try another way, but all my captioning will come up in the chat box for anybody who wants to see it. Okay. So that's what I have to do. This is the first time I see that. I'm so sorry that happened. All right.
Yeah. I'm sorry we weren't more aware of it, but yeah, I think putting it in the chat, if that works for everyone, is probably the best way forward.
Okay, you'll just have to give me a second because then I have to make some changes here with my writer.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay, we're waiting for a few more of the panelists.
See if this works.
I think we're waiting for Cynthia Copeland.
All right, so this.
Oh, there she is. Okay, so we have everyone here. We're just waiting for for Sharif to arrive. I'm sorry, not Sharif. That's his brother, Yusef, to arrive. He's running a little late. I'm just going to share.
Can you hear me?
Just as,
Can you hear me, Karen?
yes, I can hear you, Cynthia. Just a second. Let me just mute for a minute.
So when we get started, if anybody who is hosting this could let let people know that if they want the captioning, they just have to go to chat and they'll see it. I think you see it, right?
Yeah, it's in the chat box.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah, Karen, this is Terry Wisdom. Is Adamola in?
Yes, I see him as a participant.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I don't see him, but I see him. His camera's off. So Adamola, if you can turn on your camera, that would be great. Okay, I see him. Ruben, can you turn on Adamola's camera and microphone? I don't see his mic here.
I can unmute people or request that they unmute themselves, but I cannot turn on people's cameras.
Okay. Let me see if I can send him a text. I just saw him on camera. Okay, I see him. Okay. Hi, Adamola. Okay, now we'll get started now. So let me just share my screen. Ruben, can I go ahead and do that?
Let me make you a co-host.
Okay.
All right, you should be able to share now, Karen.
Okay. Can you let me know if you can see it? I started it again.
Yeah, that's great.
You can see it?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. And can you, I don't know if anybody can hear me. I think I
Yeah,
may.
we can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. So this evening, we have a panel discussion presented by Manhattan Community Board 10, our Parks and Recreation Committee, of which we formed a subcommittee. So we're here this evening to discuss the Exonerated 5 and a permanent exhibit in Central Park. So at the outset of this discussion, we, which came about back in November of last year, we began to meet around the issue around March. So we've been discussing it at in great detail since March. So the discussion was prefaced with information that was garnered from the meetings, and we came up with priorities that we would like to have, which is whatever the exhibit is, it must be respectful of the families and consist of what matters to them. So that's very important. We would like to have a very diverse dialogue and include as broad a group of stakeholders as possible. This discourse should exemplify strong community engagement around any possible themes and social justice concepts. And then we want to bring the abstract to the concrete in the form of a permanent exhibit, which may mean an interim exhibit before we get to a permanent exhibit. We also would like to respect how that exhibit will meld with the countryside intent of Central Park. So we want to keep it in context. And this meeting this evening is to engage people in thinking together how to work through the message to be conveyed by the exhibit, and how can voices and opinions be reconciled, because there will be pros and cons. So as a focus of a guiding question during tonight's panel discussion, we would like to think about what is the type of pathology that occurs when the presumption of innocence is denied. So that's our focus question to help us in reaching some sort of conclusions or consensus about things. So looking at an exhibit in Central Park, it would be a public art exhibit, and any art exhibit is a place, a venue by which we meet an audience. So we have to keep that in mind. Who is the audience that we're addressing? This is the issue of the Central Park 5 brings to my mind local issues, national issues, and international issues. So this is a global consideration. And we're looking at a permanent exhibit, but we do understand that this may mean a temporary exhibit in the interim, which would inform a permanent exhibit. The exhibit, well, in terms of art, can exist of pictures, drawings, video, sound installation, performance, interactive art, new media art, or sculptures. There's even been talk of holograms that are being used in some museums currently. And it could be by an individual artist or groups of artists who work together to develop the art piece. And we have to, in terms of the audience, Central Park has 42 million visitors each year. So there is a lot of traffic in the park and a lot of opportunities to educate people around this vital issue. This evening's guests are Rebecca Brown, who is the Director of Policy of the Innocence Project. We also have Vincent Sutherland, who is the inaugural Executive Director of the Center on Race, Inequality, and the Law at NYU Law. We have Cynthia Copeland, who is President of the Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History, and she's also a Professor of Applied Psychology at NYU. And we have Ademola Olugbofola, who is the Vice President and co-founder of the Harlem Dwyer Cultural Center. And this evening's moderator is Dr. Yusef Salam, a member of the Exonerated 5. He is delayed, as I said earlier, but he will be joining us. So I'd like to, again, we'll just go over the format of our meeting. So we're having a panel discussion, which will run from 6 to 7.
Hello.
Hello. We'll have a panel discussion which will run from 6 to 7, and will include a 15-minute Q&A, which will be done through questions that are texted. And then we will be going from 7 to 7:30 into breakout groups. One group will deal with the message that's to be conveyed. Another group is art medium. Another group is exhibit design. And the fourth group is one of the largest groups. It is to discuss Seneca Village, which is an example of an art exhibit that was installed in Central Park. Is there right now. It's a temporary installation, but we're leading to a permanent installation of an exhibit. And at the end of that, after these breakout groups, we'll come back as a whole group and we will share and begin to talk about next steps. This is only one of 3 panel discussions. The next 2 panel discussions are scheduled for Thursday, July 16th and Thursday, July 23rd. For those people who would like to see the panel discussion, you can see it you'll be able to see it on YouTube and make comments, and we welcome any comments. So thank you, and now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm not sure how to do that. Ruben, what do I need to do to come out of this? Oh, just go back to Zoom. Okay.
Yeah.
I figured. Okay. Stop the broadcast.
Yep.
Okay, it's not stopping the broadcast.
It stopped it for us.
Okay, now okay, here I am. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, so with that, I'd like to welcome Rebecca. She's gonna lead us, and as we said, Youssef will be joining us as soon as he can. Thank you, Rebecca.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. It's really a pleasure to see many of you again. And since Youssef is running a few minutes behind, I'm going to try to help to fill his very big shoes. So bear with me. But I'm sure he will take over and everyone will be happy for that. But I thought I would just start with a few remarks, just sort of, from the Innocence Project and really to talk a little bit about, just the incredible opportunity that this offers, not only the city, but the country and the world. So, as I was thinking about this and sort of the protests that are right now calling for police accountability and criminal justice reform, and it's really sweeping the nation, this is just an incredible moment to really have tonight's conversation. And we have the unique opportunity to really memorialize the experiences of the Exonerated Five, and to educate the public at the site of this incredible, huge miscarriage of justice, but also to educate the public about, a very broken criminal justice system. I think in this moment, it's especially important to consider how the treatment of Black and Latinx Americans, how they're treated on our streets, and how that often sort of that police violence translates also into wrongful convictions. I brought a stat, which is pretty staggering. There are 274 people in New York State that have been exonerated, and 74% of those people were Black or Latinx. So just an unbelievable number. The first step in a path to wrongful conviction is often the development of a suspect by law enforcement, and racial bias or just straight up racism has been shown to influence the process, leading law enforcement often to pursue and develop a case around the wrong suspect for a crime. And it's not uncommon for officers with a history of misconduct, which can include incidents of racial bias, to be connected with cases of wrongful conviction. Often when police misconduct is uncovered in a wrongful conviction case, when you do a subsequent review of that officer, you find a ton of other cases involving misconduct or wrongful conviction, ton of complaints against that officer. And the story of the Exonerated Five is perhaps the most notorious example here of police misconduct in our city. But it's certainly only one of many. And I think, just having this exhibit really presents an opportunity to tell this larger story. And I wanted to just give you an example of one, which is there was a police detective in Brooklyn, Louis Garcella, who pressured witnesses into falsely identifying suspects, fabricating and coercing confessions, and manufacturing evidence, which led into inquiries into dozens of his cases. And already 14 people have been shown to have been wrongfully convicted by this one detective. So this memorial really, I think, holds the promise of educating visitors from New York, the rest of the country, and indeed the world about our broken and very racist criminal justice system. And I think it's also a great opportunity to really feature the work of the Exonerated Five in helping to change that system. Youssef, Raymond, Kevin, were all involved in doing advocacy with the Innocence Project to pass a law in New York a few years ago that forced law enforcement to record interrogations. We're continuing to work with Youssef and other members of the Exonerated Five on a bill that would bar deception. Police are allowed to lie during interrogations right now, creating just feelings of complete hopelessness and inevitability for people that are being interrogated. So we're working together on trying to ban that as a practice by law here in New York. And so I think it's a really nice opportunity to also feature a lot of the work that Youssef, Kevin, Raymond, Corey, Antron have done around, changing the system. And so I think there are just a ton of opportunities here. We're just thrilled to be a part of this and to be invited to be here tonight. And I thought it would be wonderful to hear a bit from Vincent Sutherland about sort of his perspective on kind of this focus question, which is really kind of what happens when the presumption of innocence is denied. So Vincent, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks for having me here tonight. And I just want to echo kind of all the sentiments that Rebecca just laid out about the incredible importance of this effort and of the effort to concretize and build a monument to the types of things that we see happening in our criminal legal system day in and day out, and the incredible miscarriage of justice and the incredible tragedy, I think, that really defines what happened to the Exonerated Five so many years ago, and all the efforts that they've undertaken to help change this system for the better. And I think when I think of that question about kind of what happens and what's the pathology that flows from us not taking seriously the presumption of innocence, I think the first thing that comes to mind to me is that, the criminal legal system that we have right now is one that I think has always failed to give credence to that notion of presumption of innocence, particularly when we're thinking about people with Black and brown skin. And in fact, I think the reality is that we have a criminal legal system that attaches a presumption of guilt to your race and to your skin color, a presumption of dangerousness, a presumption of criminality, an assumption that you must have done something wrong, or must be guilty of something, or must be deserving of some punishment or some harsh control in some way. And I think a lot of that, and I'd say, almost all of it really is part and parcel of the way in which our criminal legal system came to be built in this nation. If you think about it, all the laws and all of the kind of rules and regulations that were put in place to enforce enslavement, determining whether or not you could learn to read, who you could gather with, whether or not you could have children to get married, if you could eat in a particular place. When that system fell, it evolved into Jim Crow. All the laws that were dealt with when we think about segregation, all that kind of architecture was all enforced and all upheld and propagated by the criminal legal system. The first kind of police officers in modern day policing evolved from people who were deputized to try and catch people who were trying to escape into freedom. along racial lines. And so the entire criminal legal system is really wrapped up and rooted in this effort to control and marginalize people of color, and particularly Black and brown people. And that ideology, even though, you know, many of us, of course, reject it, is still so intimately woven into the fabric of our country. And is such a part of the way in which people view the world today, and particularly law enforcement views the world today and views the people who they are interacting with on a day-to-day basis. That I think that presumption of innocence, the notion that there is a presumption of innocence, is often overcome by those ideologies that really have helped to build this country. And I think, you know, part of the value of a monument or anything that's gonna kind of memorialize what happened to the Exonerated Five and what's happening with respect to our criminal legal system and thinking about race, is that it helps people understand and confront the fact that we live in a country that was built on genocide and enslavement. You know, the land that Black people were forced to work for hundreds and hundreds of years was, you know, cleared of the Native people who were there before any of us were brought here. And America doesn't acknowledge that, doesn't want to confront that reality, doesn't want to confront that truth. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that if you fail to confront your past, then you just relive it and continue to live it over and over and over again. And I think that's what we saw in the case of the Exonerated Five. That's what we see happening in our criminal legal system. That's what we see happening, even those people who are arrested, convicted, and sentenced for things that they actually may have done, where we have a system that punishes people far too harsh for far too long, confuses vengeance with justice, confuses retribution and anger and rage with the need to actually help people move forward and advance in their lives. And so I think, you know, it's really the notion that there is this presumption of innocence, you know, it's completely overcome by all these other factors, all these other forces that have really helped to shape the nation that we live in today. And as part of, it's reflected by all the outrage and anger you see in the streets. And, you know, we're on the Zoom call because we're in the midst of a global pandemic. It's important to recognize that it's also reflected by the incredible disproportionate impact of that pandemic on Black and brown communities, where you're seeing Black people and Latinx people dying at a rate of 2 to 1 compared to their white counterparts. That's not because Black and Latinx people are disease prone. That's because of all these other things that we have failed to invest in our communities: health, education, employment, housing, all the types of things that we know that people need in order to avoid any interaction with the criminal legal system, but also to live productive, happy, and healthy lives. And so, to me, this monument, this memorial, or whatever the project kind of eventually evolves into, all can speak to those forces and the need for us to really think about how do we want to build a society that's actually going to live up to the ideals that are set forth in our founding documents, and live up to the notion that there is a presumption of innocence, live up to the notion that justice is something that we're all entitled to, and think critically about how do you repair the harms that you've done when you have a system that's run roughshod over so many people's rights, so many people's lives, and has really destroyed communities and families without any public safety benefit, however you might define those words for anyone. And so for me, it's an incredibly important conversation, and I'm really just thrilled to be a part of it, and grateful that folks have undertaken this effort, because I think, you know, we have these kind of monuments to the Confederacy that mark the iconography across the South, giving real credence to what people value and what people think is important. And so I think as those types of monuments are torn down and pulled down, it's incredibly important for us to build up new monuments to demonstrate what we actually think is important, and the kind of future we want to build for the legacy that's going to be left behind us.
That's so, yeah, well put. And I, you know, just as you were speaking, you know, it really made me think a lot about, you know, the opportunity that this monument has, you know, sort of as you were talking about, you know, the I'm not gonna be able to say that well. The monuments are torn down, right? As they're being torn down, that gives us the opportunity to kind of reimagine the kinds of monuments that we want to build, like this one. And sort of next to that is sort of an opportunity, I think, at this very monument or exhibit to kind of reimagine a criminal justice system and what that might look like. And you know, Vincent, you were just touching on sort of a lot of these themes, right? Sort of all of the kind of unaddressed social ills that we don't want to kind of deal with in our society that end up being kind of thrown into a criminal justice system. And I'm just interested in your thoughts a little bit about kind of what that might look like, what a reimagined criminal justice system might look like, and what kinds of themes might we want to sort of, you know, celebrate in a reimagined system at a monument like this.
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I think, you know, part of the challenge is we're looking for something we've never had in this country before. And so when I think of a reimagined system, I think that what we're trying to do is not only shrink the footprint of law enforcement, of police and prosecutors in people's lives, eliminate the need for prisons and jails, and, you know, stop putting people in cages as though they're animals. Try and figure out, like, what are the needs that people have in order to ensure that they're going to be able to live the type of lives that we all thrive for and strive for. How do we ensure that people are able to live with dignity and are treated with dignity? How do we ensure that when people have to be separated from society for some reason, that when they're able to rejoin society after they've gotten the help or the assistance that they need, that they're able to rejoin without encountering the types of barriers and hurdles that so many people have had to deal with, whether it's not being able to get a job or not being able to find housing, or not being able to, you know, return to their education, or not being able to get adequate health care, adequate mental health care. You know, so those are some incredibly important things. And I think there's also this real, there's this critically important piece of how do we help the community determine what public safety means? How do we help the community determine how we want to hold somebody accountable for some harm that they may have visited upon someone else? How do we allow the community, or help the community determine what that relationship looks like? How do we restore that relationship between the individual and the person or persons that they may have harmed? How do we get to the point of forgiveness? You know, and it's not as though if we eliminated prisons and jails and all these apparatus, all these features of the criminal legal system tomorrow, that there would never be any type of violent crime, there would never be any type of violence, that harm would never come to anybody at all. And so I think there's part of it was we need to reckon with that as well. What are the things that kind of that lead to interactions that turn violent or harmful? How do we kind of drill down into the psyche of individuals and work with them to deal with the trauma that they've been dealing with, which is often really the root cause of the types of interactions that most readily give rise to a lot of outrage from the public and others. Is that someone has been traumatized in their life, and that trauma has been carried on and passed on generation to generation to the point where their response to some stimulus is fight or flight. And so reckoning and dealing with the individual trauma that people have felt over the course of their lifetimes. So I think, you know, part of it to me is, when I think about a criminal legal system, I think about a system that's going to, rather than kind of separate harm and denigrate and kind of do more damage, I think of a system that's going to try and, how do we help to repair people? Because I think what we have in our criminal legal system is a system that is essentially a warehouse for all the people who are broken. And when we take people out of their communities, take people out of their families, that has a ripple effect on their communities, on their families, and it breaks them as well. It harms them as well. And so what I think about is, how do you repair those types of harms in individuals? And it's not easy work. It's challenging work. It's really difficult work. But I think for so long we have taken kind of the easy way out. It's much easier for us to lock someone away for decades on end than to try and intervene at some point early on in their life, invest in their community, invest in the types of things that we know that they might need. It's much easier to say, you know what, we're not going to deal with the problems they might have. And so I think part of it, and what I envision is something that's going to be more restorative, more reparative than what we have right now, which is at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. It's kind of like let's just throw this person away and forget about them until they eventually leave their place of incarceration, and then we'll just deal with whatever consequences come from them being dropped back into society without any of the types of supports we know that they need in order to survive.
Right. I mean, I was struck by so much that you said, but I think one of the key points was really sort of the idea of communities also driving the kind of society that they want to live in. And, as somebody who does criminal justice policy work, I'm struck so often by how many tools are used in the criminal justice system to hold communities down that involve absolutely no input from the community. And I'm thinking about blanket surveillance technologies that are supposed to predict where crime is supposed to happen, and algorithms that are totally racist that are used to, ensnare entire communities. And I think, it's just a wonderful theme, I think, too, of kind of bringing the community in to determine the kind of reimagined criminal justice system and world that they want to live in. And so I think it's a great theme to think about. And Cynthia, I'm not sure, there you are. Hi, Cynthia. I just thought, in terms of the theme of community, and, I know that you were just an incredible leader on the Seneca Village project and really sort of navigated, building something before the process of getting an exhibit displayed in Central Park, and work with Central Park and the Central Park Conservancy. So we would just love to hear from you a bit about that experience, what that process was like, and really any advice you have for us too. I'm sorry, I think you're muted still.
Can you hear?
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear? Yeah, I'm actually using my landline, so there might be some feedback because the system's not working. So the process of creating the exhibition in Central Park was a very long process. It started with the unveiling or the reveal of the Seneca Village project, and this started at the New York Historical Society. It started as an exhibition back in 1997. It was also, I'm being told to turn off my cell, but it's not my cell, it's my landline. So can you hear me through the phone, through the speaker?
Yeah, we can actually hear you just fine right now.
Okay, I'm lowering my landline phone because if I hang up on the landline, I don't think you'll be able to hear me, right?
Whatever you're doing right now seems to be working. So.
Okay, well, it's still echoing for me because I've got these two devices going. So, and I can't hear you all through my computer. So let's see if I can start again. So the New York Historical Society created an exhibition on Seneca Village. The story of the village revealed itself around the time that the African burial ground was revealed in Lower Manhattan. And it seemed like suddenly the story of the early African presence in New York was being revealed all over the city. And so through a lot of research, work that was inspired by the historical documentation and reveal by Roy Rosenzweig and Blackmar, who wrote the book, The Park and the People. Within that book, there is a section on the story of Seneca Village. And at that time, they were using all kinds of repositories throughout the city, including the New York Historical Society. And at that time, I was an education curator. and a colleague of mine, Grady Turner, and I, and other members of the Historical Society decided that it would be very useful for people to learn about Seneca Village through an exhibition. And so as we built that story, the community was very perplexed and gobsmacked because they thought they knew everything about New York City history. But, you know, when they heard that, they said, oh my goodness, there must be lots of stories like Seneca Village around, and we need to do something about that to learn more. And, you know, people were angered because they didn't know the story of Seneca Village. So the exhibition went up and it gained a lot of notice, and people wanted to hear more and be a part of it. And so the idea of creating more opportunities for education came up, and there was an effort to bring the community on board to sort of see what would be of interest to them. An advisory board was established that included people from academia as well as churches and from the local communities to sort of guide us in what could possibly be a way forward to help people to learn more about the community. And so once we did that, we connected with the field school students of archaeology at NYU and, at City University, and also at Barnard. And Diana Wall was at the City College, and she's an archaeologist and anthropologist, as well as Nan Rothschild up at Barnard. And we started to think about what is it possible that we could do an archaeological excavation. And of course, those ideas came up during the time of the exhibition that was on display at the New York Historical Society. Long story short, and moving forward, after many, many years of working with community to sort of guide us as to how we might establish and develop more of a relationship with the New York City Parks Department, Parks and Recreation, as well as the Central Park Conservancy, that we might be able to approach them to offer up a research design and an effort, proof, evidence that we should do an archaeological excavation. And so we did that excavation in 2011, but prior to the actual digging in the area, we were able to do several test pits to see if we could indeed find factual remains of the village and of the community. Prior to the actual digging, though, it took steps to do that. We had to do ground penetrating radar. We had to, to sort of determine if there was a reason for going in the ground. We had to do soil corings to find out if we could hit on the original soil and the original landscapes, because when they created the park, they brought in a lot of landfill to build up the park. So we were trying to make sure that we were hitting the right levels where the community would have lived if that were at all possible. And so through a lot of mapping, through a lot of geophysics, we were able to determine that we had identified locations that were likely to produce artifacts of the village. And so we had faced a few more obstacles, a few more requirements by the powers that be, the city powers that be. But eventually, as partners, because we brought them in along the way to keep them aware of what was going on, and by bringing in members of the greater community, the surrounding community, we were granted the right to do this excavation. So the excavation took place in the summer, actually right around this time in 2011. We invited students from City College and from local universities, NYU, Barnard. We had a host of individuals. We looked specifically for people of color who maybe were not even aware of the prospects of archaeology as a career, and invited them into the process of learning the techniques, really basic techniques of archaeology. But we were out there for 6 weeks. The students got a stipend. We were able to get grant money from a variety of spaces, including the National Science Foundation and from National Geographic and from the universities, Barnard, City College, NYU kicked in a little bit as well. And we were able to uncover all of these wonderful artifacts that now rest in the repository of the New York City as an archaeology repository. It's also known as the Nan Rothschild Archaeology Lab, located in Midtown. And they are now the stewards of all of the artifacts that we uncovered. The work has been examined, the objects have been examined and cataloged, and there's still a lot of work to do in terms of sort of telling new stories about the people that lived in Seneca Village, because prior to our exploration and our continued research, the people who were represented in that area from the early to mid 19th century were often described as, basically tramp squatters and thieves that were living off the landscape and had to be there, when in fact we, through our discoveries, found that people actually paid for their land. They were landowners, they were settlers. It was important for them to have land because they wanted to be involved in the political process, being able to vote. There were land requirements in order for Black men in particular to be able to vote. And so that was why the land was purchased in great numbers. There was a high representation of Black males. Churches there, the Zion Church, the Episcopal Church, that is an integrated church in the West African Church. There was a school that was there, as you know. And so as a result of all that work, looking forward to 2018, the historian at the Central Conservancy, Marie Walsh, for a better relationship and recognize the value of telling the story of Seneca Village. And so she really took it upon herself to push for an exhibition. And so working with the members of the Seneca Village Advisory Team, the Seneca Village Project, and we now call ourselves the Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History, working with us, we kind of helped to inform how the panels could be exhibited as a temporary exhibit, which it is at this point. The Seneca Village Project had always wanted to educate, to push for an excavation, and also to have some form of commemoration once we were able to have evidence that we had found all of these artifacts and could tell a richer and a better story. And although we only excavated a very small portion of the village, we still yielded quite an expansive bit of material culture that can help to tell the story a little bit better. So that was the process. It took a while for the signage that you see in the park now for it to be developed, and we brought in the community board. They had some say in how they wanted things to appear, but I would say that that process from concept to actual implementation probably took about a little over a year, close to 16 to 18 months once you got all the images together, once you got the story going, once the determination of where items would be placed to tell the story. So that has been the very long process of creating and realizing an outdoor form of commemoration and exhibition to help to educate New Yorkers. Now I can't hear you guys anymore, so I have to call in again to hear you.
Okay, I think just because we just might need a minute to reconnect with Cynthia. I'm not sure, by the way, also if Youssef has been able to join us yet, because I don't want to overstay my moderator welcome.
I don't see him. I don't see him yet, Rebecca. But
Okay.
while we are waiting for Cynthia to come back on, we can hear from Adamola.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be great. And, you know, I understand that you had done or dedicated some artwork to the Exonerated Five. I just heard it very briefly in passing, so forgive me if I'm getting that wrong, but we would love to hear about your involvement in that and whatever you want to share.
Well, I was fortunate that excuse me,
Hello?
how many of everybody
Hi.
knows about hello? Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The Greater Queens chapter of the Links, which is a social educational organization of professional women who do all kinds of wonderful things for youth and for the community in general. They decided last October during their annual gala to celebrate and honor the Exonerated Five. Dr. Youssef, who I haven't heard from, Doctor, are you there?
I think he's not here yet, although his mother
Oh,
is.
I thought I heard. They commissioned me to, because I created something many, many years ago where instead of going to the trophy store and buying a prefabricated, mass-produced trophy or piece of crystal, that I would begin to incorporate art into giving as a tribute to any particular person. So what I did was took one of my woodcuts, which was called Confrontation, and I crafted that image into an award that was then presented, created for all five of the Exonerated Five. Now, Dr. Salam and Corey were actually present at the event. The other three gentlemen were not able to make it, but we were able to send the awards to them. So it was a wonderful event by this group of women. Again, it's the Greater Queens chapter of the Links. And the moderator was the young lady on Spectrum One. Her name slips me right now, but she was the moderator. Long story short, we incorporated something that was significant, created during the 60s, and it was called Confrontation. And regrettably, I don't have the image to show you, but I can share it, or you can go online and see that. What I'm listening to is the wonderful input from so many of our panelists here. And what came to mind in terms of what would hopefully be a permanent monument and educational experience, that monument has to be majestic. It speaks of victory. It speaks of rising above adversity. I can't even begin to imagine what that is now, but I think that is the feeling that I get, and that's one of the reasons that I've been invited, so that I can give a creative, visceral view on what this monument or exhibit should be. So that is really the thinking at this point. It's way too early because I know we're going to have two other discussions, but to incorporate all of your concerns is going to be the challenge. And the ultimate challenge is creating something that is going to engage the public in a creative, dynamic way. When they come upon this monument plus exhibit, that's what I hope we will eventually come to, where you have an actual physical piece of sculpture or some three-dimensional object, and then you also have panels or maybe even something more creative that engages the public. It's very important that anybody who comes upon this, that it becomes an experience. And it should be an experience that, of course, speaks to the core issue. which is much of the impression, innocent people being sent to jail and their lives being ruined. Along with that reality is about what do we do going forward. I think whatever exhibit we finally come up with should also be offering solutions and offering a sense of hope, and always a sense of unity will ultimately create victory. And unity will suppress and defeat evil things that are being perpetuated on innocent people. So again, it's a little early to speak more specifically, but those are the kind of components creatively that me and others that I would want to engage, other creative people, so that whatever we come up with, that it is dynamic, very engaging, and speaks to not only the importance of what has happened, but going into the future, what must happen. So that's the creative challenge that myself and whatever team I pull together, along with Community Board 10 and all of you, that's the creative challenge that I'm absorbing as I listen to all of you.
Well, I love that, because I think it really does speak to sort of also this notion of reimagining what this could be, what this world could be. And I think that's just probably a great theme to maybe end on. Karen, I want to be really mindful of the time. I know that this panel is an hour, and Cynthia, I have so many questions for you too. So I was fascinated by what you were sharing. So but I think that we're a little out of time, and I should probably turn it over to Karen at this point to move us into.
Let me just in closing, the whole idea of a living experience, reimagining is very important. I hear that coming from you and others. And the history of resistance is important. And again, it's all about doing it creatively, so that the person does not feel that they're being beat over the head, but that they want to be involved. It's easy to understand that a child as well as an adult will walk away from that more enlightened.
That's really helpful. And, and some of our conversations here have already been about how we can engage young people in this. So I think it's a great theme to end on. And I'm so grateful. And thanks for everyone for, just participating in the panel, for indulging me as your sad moderator for the night. But I'm so happy to be with you all, and very, very excited to participate in the breakout sessions. And I just couldn't be more energized by this project. I think it's a long time coming. It's overdue, and it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful moment for our city, and we need it now more than ever. So
absolutely.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and you've been a fantastic moderator. Thank you so much.
Yes, excellent moderator.
And I'd just like to say now we will go ahead. We're going to not do this Q&A right now, but we're going to go ahead into the breakout group so that we can put our heads together and come up with some ideas around the message to be conveyed, the medium of art that might be used, the exhibit design, and then we have another group for just to take a look at the Seneca Village project and what that entailed. So Tahani, I'm going to ask if you could just kind of get maybe 5 points or more from your group, which would be the message to be conveyed. And if you could share your screen or just verbalize it, that would be great. And you'll be given capability to do that.
Okay.
Barbara and Stephanie, if you could do the group on art medium and just kind of get 5 points or more in your group. And if you can share a screen share, that would be great. If not, we can just verbalize that. And again, the group on exhibit design, Karen Dixon, are you here? And Stephanie Palmer?
I'm here, Karen.
Oh, okay, great. So if you could just do the same thing in your group, which would be exhibit design. And then we're going to have a fourth group for the Seneca Village. Okay, so Ruben is going to break us up into groups now, and then we'll do that for about 30 minutes or less and come back to share.
Excuse me, Karen, this is Stephanie. Before we go into the groups, I see Yusuf Shalom mother is on the phone. We would like to hear from her before we go into the groups. Is that possible?
Yes, if she's like, yes, that's fine.
Yeah, she's on the call. I see her on the call.
Yes, Sharon, would you like to say something? Ruben, can you unmute?
Sure, one second.
Okay, there you go. I did it. Well, I'm glad to see this process starting, not starting, but moving more forward than it has been moving before. And, you know, I do agree with some of the comments that were made, with many of them really, of the comments that were made. And I imagine one of the important things for us is a piece that speaks to the changes within our community and how we can make African American people as humane as possible, because, you know, part of these issues that relate to justice gears toward us being seen as less than human, and therefore very easily to be convicted and vilified within the eyes of other people. And when we look at these types of exhibits and see what we can get out of it, because one of the things we do want is for people to walk away with a lasting impression, a lasting experience of whatever it is, whatever the final product is. And an example of that lasting expression to me is a street, what should I say, street out exhibit in Birmingham, Alabama. And that exhibit is across the street from the church that was bombed, where they bombed those 4 children. And on the side of it, they have a museum, African American museum, regarding that period of time. But they show within this park setting a number of statues, and they show a number of dialogues between people who were representing in this particular climate of fighting for civil rights. And it was very interesting when you see it, and you see, like, for instance, there's one of the exhibit where you see a statue of this dog, and it's in full attack mode, and you can see the chain behind it, but it's no one holding the chain. But when you see it and you walk away, it makes you feel like, you know, and somehow that the dog is real, and that everything that you're seeing around it is real. And this learning experience really puts you into that moment. But it's also important to take away something in the learning experience behind it that talks to how we move forward as a community, how we move forward to make sure that this doesn't happen again, how we educate our people going forward as well. So it's very interesting and how you do it. Like even with the piece where you have the kids going into prison, and then you have them coming, like you have in Africa, they have this thing called the door of no return. And then they have a door of return. So it goes through the gamut, and you can humanize the family members that are in this type of situation, because as Black people, I do feel that we are a dehumanized group. And it helps people to think that different types of things can happen to us and be done to us, because that's who we are, and we accept these types of behavior and we live with it every day. But we are more than that. And the exhibit should express itself in a way that says these people in this community are more than that. They cry also if their children are hurt. They love, they, you know, rely on each other. They support each other. You know, they are the same as other kind of communities. And you want all of that type of stuff. I don't know how you're going to get all of it right at this moment, but you want all of that stuff to become a real part of what's coming out of this space, which also includes the learning experience, where, you know, people might walk around and see something about their rights or whatever it is going forward that they can walk away with and think about and move forward. So I'm hoping that we move forward and, you know, get some more stuff done. Some wonderful stuff.
I see Yusef is on.
Yusef is on?
Yes. You see him?
Everybody,
Yusef,
Hey.
how are you?
not bad, not bad.
Welcome, son.
Thanks, Mom.
So would you like to say a couple of words to the group here? And because we're getting ready to break out into the breakout sessions, but Karen and Rebecca and the rest of those people that have been presenting have been doing an excellent, excellent job. And it's moving forward. So I'm going to mute my mic.
Yeah, I'm a little late to the party, but I'm glad to see everybody on it. I hope that's not me. I hear a lot of air somewhere. But I'm happy that I see so many familiar faces and friends on the call, and some faces that I don't know, but I'm sure everyone is familiar with the case and the importance, really, of us being able to be in a position now to teach people, you know, through imagery, through structure, you know, through example, because I think that's one of the things that speaks to the reality of what Dr. Angela Davis said when she said we as a people have historical amnesia. And I think the reality of that isn't that we have that because we decided to not know, but rather because of how we've been socialized. They've trained and taught, and you know, it's like The Education of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, but it's also like The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. You know, so I'm glad to see you all and happy that you all are participating in this great effort. And I can't wait for it to happen. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Yusef. And we're going to go into the breakout groups. And I just want to thank Mrs. Salam for that, for those wonderful words of wisdom and that advice, the profound advice that you've given. So, Ruben, are we ready to go into the breakout rooms?
Pretty much. There are just 3 people. They might have dialed in, and so I'm not sure who they are and which groups they belong to.
Well, they could go into 4, the 4th group.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's not someone who is in another group, but because of audio issues.
Okay.
So I'll just assign people to the 4th group, those who have dialed in. And if there is a mistake, please reach out to Karen or myself via the chat option, and we'll get you into the right group. So, all right, I'm going to open them right now, and people will be sorted into their various groups. One sec.
Are we supposed to click this thing that says join breakout room?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Sir Winston.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi. So we've started the breakout rooms, and you should have gotten a prompt that says join breakout room regarding the art medium. Did you get that yet?
No, I didn't. I'm late for the party too.
Okay, not a problem. Let's figure this out.
I'm sort of new at this, so I'm learning as we do it.
Okay. Did you get a notification now?
Well, I can join it just by pressing this, right?
Yes. Excellent.
Hello, everyone. We have returned abruptly to the main panel discussion. So we were in the midst, if you were in the midst of answering a question or asking a question, we will try to address that more lengthily. So we'd like to ask the co-hosts to share just very briefly what you got out of your groups. We can start with the message to be conveyed group. So can we hear from the group leader? That would be Tahani. Tahani, can we hear from your group?
You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, maybe from your side?
We can hear you now.
You can hear me? Okay, because I unmuted myself.
Yes.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Hani Abushi. I am a civil rights attorney here in New York City. I'm also a member of Community Board 10. We didn't necessarily itemize 5, but we tried to categorize kind of 2.5 to 3 different messages. The first was humanizing African Americans and people of color as community members and family members. And Ms. Salam had mentioned that on the night that this event happened, there were a lot of parents there, and there was fear and anger and frustration and crying. And so we should be mindful of evoking empathy and those emotions so that there's a connection with those who are witnessing the exhibit and monument, to remind them that African Americans are human beings. And we are starting from a place where, from slavery and thereafter, that African Americans were considered property. They weren't even considered human beings. And so the extent and the drive from which we need to evoke those emotions has to keep that backdrop in mind. We kind of are working to the rehumanization of African Americans because they have been dehumanized since the beginning. So that was the first message. The second message was that this is not history, and nothing has been overcome. There is absence of African American education in the curriculum, and the life experience of Black people has been one of criminal justice and prosecution that has consistently resurfaced in different forms, whether it was some kind of voter disenfranchisement or separate but equal, and then your mass incarceration and mass criminalization, and then everything thereafter, whether it's economic, educational, or other opportunities that have cut them out. And so we need to have the door open for all, not one or two, but for all to walk through, African Americans to walk through and welcome. And then the last one, which we didn't get to because that 43-second clock came and kicked everyone out, I think we were about to talk on the way forward, and that Ms. Salam was saying something needs to be done to help the community move forward, to see that there is, that this is not the stopping point, but there is something that needs to be done, or some kind of emotion that evokes to those who are witnessing it in the communities from which this atrocity happened, to feel hope and expect that there is a way forward and something will be done. And so that's what we have for the beginning of the message to be conveyed.
Thank you, Tahani. That's fantastic. And I'd just like to ask if that can be submitted in writing. If you could just send that over to me, that would be great. Okay, thank you so much. We would like to hear next from Barbara, exhibit design.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and share my screen.
So Karen?
Yes.
This is Karen Dixon. My group was exhibit design.
Oh, okay. So you work together, is that right?
No. Our group was design, art, and medium.
Oh, art medium.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So we'll come back to you, Karen. So Barbara's is art medium. I'm sorry.
So can you guys see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, share screen. Okay, I don't know why it's not coming up, but I'll just read through it.
Ruben, let me just ask Ruben. Ruben, can we fix that problem, the issue with Barbara's screen?
Yeah, let me see.
Okay. Are you on an iPad, Barbara?
No, I'm on my laptop.
Barbara, can you try now, please, to see?
Okay, let's see. Okay, there we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so what we talked about first was the concept, and we put together a bit of what we heard from everyone speaking, which was it needs to talk about resistance. It needs to be something that represents humanity and that humanism, that we're all should be seen as humans. It needs to also represent experience, and that can be various experience, but if we focus on incarceration, how young boys, particularly how our system is fed by, or was fed by, African American and Latinos, as referred to as X, right? And we wanted it to be educational and learning so that even a child could walk away learning something about not just culture, but experience. And we also talked about locations, and adamant that it's Central Park, somewhere around 110th Street, making sure that it represents the Harlem community. And within a distance of, we're still looking at the possible RFP for the Center of Social Justice. I believe it's Social Justice, I'll correct that. The vision that was discussed was a monument of the Exonerated Five, possibly showing NYPD in very little tiny vision, a vision of them at the bottom, because for so many years they were, and today they're placed, they're given too much control and power. We also talked about something that's digital and a touch screen so that people can, I'm sorry for the noise, so that people can touch the screen and more than one person could use it at one time. In terms of being able to touch and answer a question or a query about what it actually is, in a multi-fashion. We wanted to be inspirational. We wanted it to be something that also says, this is not the direction we wanted to go, like show what actually happened and how do we, educational, and how do we prevent these things from happening. There was a question about funding, and Stephanie explained that that's something that we're going to work on once we get the basics in place. And Mr. Gilbert was adamant, along with Yusef's sister, that we talked about how important it is to have a support system in place for anyone that's incarcerated, because not all of the Exonerated Five had the family support and unity to help them through this trauma, because it was a traumatic experience. And that's basically it.
Thank you, Barbara.
Welcome.
Okay. And so lastly, if we could hear from someone from the Seneca Village group. I know we were in the midst of answering a question for Donna Gill. Donna, would you like to just share with us what you gathered from viewing the Seneca Village video?
And Karen, just a friendly
Karen
reminder.
Gibson has to speak as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Has to speak as well.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought I'm sorry.
Go first, and then I'll speak after.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Karen?
Oh, okay. So after such a wonderful presentation, thank you, Barbara, for showing us up.
Please.
Our group had some technical issues, but we did have a hearty discussion. I think we agreed with all of the things outlined around what the design should look like. But Ademola also had some concerns around what would be the timeline, what would be the potential costs, what would be the budget, so as to determine whether it, moving from a temporary to a permanent exhibition. I explained to the group that initially it'll be a temporary installation, and then we would move towards a securing a permanent installation. And so that was a lot of the discussion. So the issues around costs and fundraising, Daniel Patterson suggested that the Central Park Conservancy, definitely, we know with Seneca Village, there was fundraising around certain activities. And so that whether it's GoFundMe, what are the different types of fundraising strategies that would be looked at, including even looking at any SBA loans, and we started to hash that out, but we didn't get time because we were at the 3-second moment as well, and we all were thrusted back in. The other thing that was raised was that on the construction side, the building of whatever installation is going to be placed there, that Black and brown builders be a part of that project. Absent the requirements of the city and the state's MWBE enterprises going way above and beyond that. And that was again reiterated by Prince, who had joined us previously on all of our committee meetings. And then finally, Mr. Patterson recommended that we look at Frederick Law Olmsted, who built the park, to talk about the fact that the New York City went from having a thriving community that was contributing to the economic outlook of the city, and they built Central Park. They decided to build a park over this village and displace all of these people. And that was in 1857. And here we are, we're still talking about the same type of behaviors, the same type of views towards people of color in this city. Gentlemen, did I accurately get all of that? Thumbs up would be fine.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. So now, Donna, would you like to present?
Sure.
Okay.
Basically, what we did was we looked at Seneca Village. Cynthia has a great video of the Seneca Village, what happened, what's going on. And I think everyone should take a look at it if they haven't seen it as yet. Now, my question to Cynthia was the fact that it is temporary at this time, and she was in the middle of answering the question when we were thrust back into the main category, main body of people. But I still feel like Seneca Village represents something of a thriving African-American community. And it wasn't just African-Americans. I mean, there were other ethnic people as well in the village. So it shows unity. So I think that if we have something like that, I want to really know about the permanency of it and the way that we can show that the community is actually what it.
Hi, Donna, you're on mute. Donna, if you're still there, you need to unmute yourself.
I apologize for that. My computer acts crazy sometimes. So what I was saying, if I don't know if everybody heard me, was that we want to really exhibit something that shows the unity and that the community is invested in this, because the community was not consulted. The community was actually stigmatized, and we want to get beyond that stigma to show that this tragedy happened, and remind people that this is what happens when you are a marginalized community. And that's
Well,
it.
I just like,
Mhm.
oh, did you have something else?
No, that's it. I'm finished.
Okay. Cynthia, did you want to respond briefly to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the community was, or the exhibition is currently a temporary exhibition, but the Central Park Conservancy is having conversations about somehow turning it into a more permanent exhibition. I don't know what that means, because you know, as the so-called gatekeepers of the park, they have ideas about what is to be and what will remain in the park. And I would caution that whatever we end up doing with this particular, with the exhibition that we want to have, when thinking about interactives and things of that sort, we have to really think about the elements, if it's going to be out there and it's going to be permanent, how that will affect the use in the winter and the rain and the snow and that sort of thing. So I don't know if it might be more to our thinking of doing something a little bit more sort of low tech, or maybe integrating the cell phones and using QR codes, and you call up a number and you get more information, or you can do things that way, technologically speaking. But I think to actually have it in the space, we might be up for some grave disappointments based upon the elements, the dogs running around and doing their business. I mean, we have to think about all of those things, right, when we are trying to determine what will happen. I know as part of the Seneca Village story and as I mentioned, the advisory group, we've always wanted to have this idea of the possibility of excavation, which we, have checked off. And then we were also hoping that we could, continue to educate. Education was the main focus of what it is that we wanted to do, but then also this idea of commemoration. And when we first came up with the idea, again, back in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, there was a lot of pushback because exactly for what's happening now, they put these things up and now they're thinking, oh, other groups are going to come in and they're going to want to do something, and so is going to want to do something, right? And so, how do you address all of those needs and be fair? But I do think that it is time for Black folk to be able to have a serious say. One of the things that we were suggesting is for our purposes for Seneca Village as a more permanent space for commemoration is to think about working something into the current aesthetics of the park so that it could be maybe a garden that is specifically addressed to the people of Seneca Village, and finding the original flora and the fauna and the kinds of vegetables and things that were grown there when the village was in place. Maybe we can figure out a way to do something really beautiful that speaks to the community, and you can go in and you can rest and you can look back and you can reflect, and then you don't have so much of a pushback against the so-called gatekeepers of the park. So I think it's really important for us to kind of think about what exists in the park at the moment, and then try to take our leads from that, because otherwise you will get a lot of pushback. They will say this isn't possible, or that's not, what we do. So we have to kind of, be like we do, right? Be really creative and innovative, but get our way, right, in how we're doing and work with that which is out there. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Karen,
Was...
I just wanted to say that some people have questions. They've got their hand raised. How do you want to handle that?
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Youssef right now, and see if we can get a couple of questions in. If not, we can answer them offline as well, but we would, we could do it that way. But I'd just like to hand it over to Youssef right now.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. So I like the way that this is going. Definitely a great step in the right direction as we envision and visualize this great outcome that we're looking at. It's crazy because I was looking online earlier and they were talking about how money was defunded, or that's not the word they used, but they were talking about how money kind of came out of the Harlem area and went down to build the structure.
The vessel.
Yes. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of money that we could have probably used and put to great use up here in Harlem for the purposes of just all of this stuff, right? And
Questions?
yeah, looking at where we are and envisioning some next steps. I think the next meeting that we're going to be having too is going to be next Thursday. Is that right? Or is it 2 from now? So next Thursday we're going to have another meeting.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday. Okay, great.
Back to back.
Yeah, I know we're coming up on time, so I just want to kind of get to some of the questions quickly that were raised. I see Prince had his hand raised.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, just to expand on the last two things that actually Yusuf said, and I think it was Cynthia prior to about the Seneca Village. Well, first I want to thank Ms. Ori for pulling such a large and diverse group together, and why that's so important. To speak to what Cynthia, I'm not looking at your last name, so pardon me for using your first name. This is why it's so important that you have a large, diverse group at the table to address those kind of things when you do come to the pushback. For instance, this is why I'm saying that we should have minority developers and builders as a part of that conversation, so that when they put things in front of you, like, oh, you can't do this. For instance, just dealing with the elements comment. I don't know if you noticed the kiosk that they put up on each corner where you can charge your phone, but it's a multi-purpose thing. And that was built to withstand elements. So things like that do exist, but if you're not a part of construction and development, and you're not experiencing that, if they tell you it can't be done, we automatically revert to that. And to speak to what Yusuf said, that Hudson Yards, he's referring to Hudson Yards, that whole thing, it was a carve out literally that went all the way up to Harlem that allowed them to access tax-free bonds to build that. And yet it excluded the very heart of Harlem that is in most need of that kind of investment. So again, if we don't have people at the table that understand this stuff, then we can very easily be, worked around in these situations. So again, I want to thank Ms. Horry for pulling a diverse group together so that when these things come up, that we have somebody at the table that can address them, because that's how you counter that you have people in finance, you have people in development, you have people that can address these issues, because trust me, they're going to have a wide array of people and minds that can speak to all of this stuff. We just have to be in a position to match that. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that. That's definitely important. Especially the part of making sure that we have folks that look like us be a part of this project, because it's about empowering, and it's about not just talking about and giving life to this wrong, to right this wrong, but also empowering people as well to make sure that we move in the right direction. So I'm not sure if there were any other questions.
We've got 2 hands raised at least.
Okay.
So I'm sorry I did not see which order people raised their hands, but Folly V, I apologize if I mispronounced that, but
Yes, it's Felivi.
Levy, thank you.
No problem. My question was to see how this can everything that you're doing can be added into like schools, specifically in our education system. I like I told my group before, I was very lucky to have a black male teacher who was able to teach me everything from the Exonerated 5 to the village that was in such a park. And I wanted to know, how is there any way that we can be able to teach that in DOE, and that is, instead of me having to go to a teacher, it's just straight in the curriculum.
I like that. I like that idea, because at one point inside of the curriculum, they taught about the Central Park Five, and it was a very negative teaching. It was a teaching that spoke to this false information that Donald Trump put out there, that the city believed about us and about the families. And what they did was they just never corrected that wrong. And so those people that went to school that learned about that false history, they went off with that, you know. And I think, to your point, it's important too, not only to just have it be somewhere that people can see and experience, but also as history is told and taught in school, that is corrected. Yeah.
And that speaks to what Prince was saying. You have to have the people that look like us, who have the expertise to be at the table, to insist that this stuff gets put into the curriculum. And if they don't, then we have to put it in ourselves, and we have to create our own curriculum. You know, we have to take advantage of social media and all the tools that are out there and push out our own stuff, making sure that what we put out is, you know, totally accurate, you know, but our narrative that is often overlooked. We have to do that.
I had a question.
Yes. So Terry, you had your hand raised, and then Aisha, I'll go to you next. Okay.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. And if you're
Okay.
not, and 1 second, please, Terry. If you're not speaking, I ask that you please mute your mic. There is a lot of background noise that's interfering with our speakers. I just want to make sure everyone is heard clearly.
So I think that I'm part of the subcommittee and community board 10, but I think that we're at a very historic time in terms of rolling out with this project. And I think that whatever our vision is, we should keep to that and have a vision that involves culture, involves the history, so that we're telling our story, and it involves the art that is representative of that. And I like the idea of, like you said, there are these billboards that have information that are able to withstand the weather. Maybe there's even a building structure that can happen. So I think that whatever the thoughts are, we should project those. But we have just gone through a public art situation right here in Harlem that's been very interesting, with the Black Lives Matter being painted on both sides of Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard. And it was a collective project. I've interviewed many of them through my programming in Harlem Network News. And it was a collective project, which was very powerful. And each artist brought their thoughts and their concepts to the table. So I think that we're in a time period where doors are open for us, and we must keep those doors open and bring that culture and that history. And it also, what I saw in the Black Lives Matter project was a great sense of ownership, a great sense of pride. That is a temporary exhibit. However, there's even discussion about keeping that mall as a corridor. And interestingly enough, just in terms of how we are completely marginalized, the initial Black Lives Matter projects that were funded by the city and the mayor, one is downtown, which is great, it's near to the African burial ground, but the other is in front of Trump. But they're the people who put this together, Harlem Park to Park and another nonprofit, with the support, not the financial support, it was completely community paid for. But the fact is that the borough president and the state senator went to bat so that this could happen, because they felt, well, if you're going to do a Black Lives Matter, it should be in Harlem. So I think that we must take a stand on whatever is going to happen and hold our thing, hold our guard. We are taxpayers, and there may be gatekeepers, but we have to claim it and we have to stand strong. And even amidst of what happened with this Black Lives Matter, there are people who came up, 4,000 bikers, to denigrate this property. So, of the Black Lives Matter. So we really have to take a stand and understand where we are and what is going on and tell the truth in many, many ways. I think we've got to stick with the culture. I think we've got to stick with the history. And I think we've got to transcend all of the pain that has happened and the pain of incarceration as it impacts families and everybody. We have to speak so that our youth can understand, because we're still dealing with a lot where you're having to really educate the people, because everything around is miseducated. So that's what I have to say. I think we're at a great start, and we need to really be the creative people and the brilliant people that we are. That's it. So thank you. And I'd love to have Youssef and your mom and anybody else to do an interview so we can have a more extended conversation. So hopefully Ms. Hori can put us in touch so we can do some of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. I'd just like to say Winston Gilchrist has his hand raised as well. So if you could just call on him after.
Sis Aisha.
Aisha, yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to make mine short. I just wanted to ask Cynthia, where did the name Seneca come from? Because every time you say Seneca, I think of a Native American tribe.
Right. That's still under investigation. We don't know. We know that we found some evidence that in the church registrar of the All Angels Church, they referred to the people as Seneca Village. We found a paper article from the 1930s or early 1900s that said that the place called Seneca where people used to live, but those are the only two contemporary references that we have for that space. There are thoughts that it was either, there were Native American trails that were a little bit farther east that ran through that area in the 1500s and 1600s. They are also thinking, the historical community is thinking that it could have been referred to, because it was so far away from the population, thinking of it as a form of this idea of manifest destiny, where the white people were trying to move people out, but the people of color would stand in the way to say, no, you can't move us. And so they saw this as sort of a tension. And so they might refer to them as those, you know, as a derogatory term. And then finally, there is a philosopher, a Roman philosopher, Lucius Seneca, who wrote a book on Seneca's morals and talked about this idea of, you know, slavery is a bad thing, but if you have enslaved people, you need to treat them like X, Y, and Z. And when the race men and women were trying to fight for the suffrage of Black people and trying to gain our liberation, a lot of the race men and women were reading Seneca's morals and were referring to that. So Frederick Law Olmsted, when he went down to the southern border to understand what was happening with the ideas of enslavement, he noticed that a lot of the Black people who were the activists and who were the abolitionists and who were fighting for the rights of Black people were using that as a means to understand. So these are the ideas that are floating around, but we really have no idea why it was called Seneca.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Winston, I think you had your hand raised as well.
My question is to Youssef. Youssef, after hearing all this, I'd love to hear your vision of what you think should be done and where it should be, and what lessons you've learned from this exposure. I know what I've learned from you. All right, how to be tolerant and understanding and forgiving. Can you hear me?
Yes, just
Oh,
trying
okay.
to. Yeah.
All
So I
right.
mean, I'm thinking of some type of a visual representation, but also a space that also allows people to come into to connect this particular injustice with the greater injustices that we've been seeing around the country and around the nation. Because what happens is there's a tendency, I think, to teach things in a way where people believe that this is an anomaly as opposed to the norm.
Mm.
You know, Malcolm X said, I think he was alluding to, I think it was either him or both he and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where they were talking about the American dream. But I know that Malcolm is often referenced to have said, we woke up to the American nightmare, you
Right,
know.
right,
And so to
right.
understand it from that perspective is to capture this moment in time
Mhm.
as significant, but also connected to all of the other things, the Emmett Tills of the world, you know,
Mm.
the stuff that's going on now that's being videotaped, and all of the atrocities that are happening, and the stuff that are not being told. You know, the fact that there's still young men and people being hung around the nation
Mhm.
for whatever reason, you know, that this still becomes okay. You know, the noose that was found in Bubba Wallace's, um, you know, his garage, so to speak,
Mhm.
at the carport, and all of the symbolisms and all of that stuff that's connected with it all. But I think as a good thing in terms of us being able to be in this space, as was talked about, is that we're in a position now where we can't just talk about it from a one or two perspective. It's really about changing the whole thing. And
Mhm.
it's about making sure that that change is significant enough so that as a part of what I've been calling breaking generational curses,
Mhm.
we
Okay.
become our ancestors' wildest dreams.
Right.
We
Right.
we we have this baton and understand that it's a marathon, like
Mhm.
Nipsey talked about. But at the same time, we know that we have to do our part. We have to do everything that we were given and what our purpose is to do, so that we push things forward. You know.
I like you to teach people how not to be bitter. That's what you taught me.
Part of that is my
Not to be
mama.
bitter. Oh yeah, of course, I forgot. I slipped my mind for a minute.
Yeah. But that's the other thing too. I think part of justice is restorative.
Okay.
Part of justice and the part that I'm thinking about is what Malcolm talked about when he said, if you pull a knife out of my back 6 inches,
Right. Right.
that doesn't really do anything. You know, what does something is taking it all the way out and healing the wound.
That's it.
And the people who put the knife in the back in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to be understood like this whole thing is a concerted effort. You know, I'm looking at some of these social media depictions and they're talking about just atrocities that have happened. You know, we know about the Third Reich, but what about King Leopold and what he did? And all of the others that have been kind of swept under the rug, you know? And so all of this stuff is kind of now, we're at this point now where we're awakening, right? This is the woke state. This is like people are awakening, and you know, the other part is what James Baldwin said.
Mm.
He said to be a black person and relatively conscious in America is to be in a fit of rage at all times. And we've been playing those two worlds.
But you got over that.
Very well. Well, we now, I mean, some folks is part of it is because we've been taught the miseducation.
How do we get over Trump? All that evil that he's bestowed on us.
One of the things that I've personally, I would say, come to terms with is that everything that happens to you is happening for you.
This is God's plan?
But to describe it is that if you like when my mother sent me to learn martial arts, I hated I didn't hate the teachers. I just hated their methods because they taught us. I was being trained by Master Little John Davis,
Right.
and instead of us having to break boards that had scores on it, we had to break boards that didn't have no score. It was like a real piece of plywood that we had to break.
Yeah.
And we were doing push-ups on our knuckles and things of that nature. And one of the things I found out was that he and Dr. Moses Powell were talking about needing to teach people real life.
Okay.
We can't play with it, right? When you hit something, you have to have the calluses of life in order to be able to take the hit, take the blow. And so being run over by the spike wheels of justice back then introduced me to the evil, right? But prior to that, my mother could tell you, prior to that, we would walk around the neighborhood and sometimes we would see officers walking around the neighborhood and my mother would pop my hand. If I said, "Hey, how you doing, Mr. Officer?" I had no physical understanding of what she was teaching me. My sister's here too. But she was telling us often that she was raised in the Jim Crow South. I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
Welcome to America.
Right.
And this becomes as American as apple pie. But what we're doing, which is important and which is a blessing, is we're trying to get true freedom, justice, and equality.
Mm-hmm.
And just to say it, it's a blessing that we don't want revenge.
That's right. That makes you hate.
Absolutely.
All right.
But and this is the last thing I want to say before I think maybe we may have another hand up. But I got to echo the words of Dr. Maya Angelou, because she's really the one who taught us how not to be bitter. Because what she said, you should be angry. Right? She said you should be angry because anger changes you. When you get angry about something, you say, "Man, I don't like that anymore. I want to do something about it." Anger changes you. She said you should be angry, but you must not be bitter.
Right.
She said bitterness is like a cancer. It eats upon the host. It doesn't do anything to the object of its displeasure.
Or taking poison and expecting your enemy to die.
Right. But this is how we become alchemists.
Right.
The alchemy is what we do with the anger. She said, so use anger.
All right.
She said, you march it, you dance it, you vote it, you do everything about it. You talk it, never stop talking it.
Right.
And I think the ability to get it out, right? Almost by any means necessary, but in a positive way. The ability to get it out is what cures us. And it cures us as a people. It cures humanity,
No, well, you got to put God in there. That's the most important part.
Yeah.
Learning to love the God that was in. Well, the God in me loves the God in you. My brother. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So I'm not sure if there have been any other hands raised. I know we've gone over some time.
I don't see any other hands, either on video or in the participant screen. Does anyone else have any question?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Well, yes, I had my hand up for quite some time now.
Okay.
It wasn't in terms of a question. It was for the young man, Folivi, right? Am I saying it correctly? I apologize if I'm
Yes, Folivi.
So Folivi, I'm trying not to tell my age as well, but for many of us, we were taken out of the books, and it was an intentional lack of education so that you didn't identify with your strength, the fact that we're descendants of kings and queens and that we have more power, and that's why our power has been, let's just say, taken away by the lack of the teaching. So you said, how do you bring it to the school? I think you're about the youngest person on this panel. You might perhaps begin to think about writing a children's book about your experiences as well as what you're participating in now. not just a children's book. I'm just saying that it's something that many of us are documenting, but you may have a different perspective on the documentation because what you're living is now, and now is different for you than it's been for us because some of us are very tainted because we've lived it, and you're in the process of living it. So that's all I wanted to say.
I have
Thank you.
Just a quick question and statement. Tina Dunkley, I wanted to acknowledge that I was invited this evening to observe and listen to the project. Yusuf, I met you at my exhibition in Atlanta where they interviewed you for the AJC Atlanta Journal of Constitution. So this is a very powerful project, and given my background and experience with public, sitting on panels for public art, and it's a major undertaking that I think will definitely come to fruition. I think what Cynthia was saying relative to the quote unquote gatekeepers and the interaction that the group will be having with regards to the works that will be presented or concepts that will be presented. This is something that I think, I mean, I don't know how all of who is going to be involved in that engagement, but I know that will be a challenge forthcoming. And I was curious to know if will there be a jury? Will there be an invitational type exhibition or artists commit or solicitations to specific artists that have produced works for certain projects? Or I was just trying to get a sense of how that was going to roll out. Or maybe that's a question for another meeting, but that's the question that I had.
Sorry, Miss Tina, I need to, and to everyone involved. In our panel, we also talked about the possibility of a contest on an international and global level. So we would have a wide perspective of other people's, not just experience, but depicting it in whatever format we end up with, be it a monument, be it whatever.
Right.
So that's just that's something I forgot. Karen, I need to edit that document I sent you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
See, my mom has her hand up.
Okay, well, I'm going to say something very quick because I think I might be the last one. Let me say two things. We'll probably discuss what you were talking about, Tina, later on down the road to solidify how that process is going to work. But also, right now, we need to reach out to as many people as possible. And I'm looking here, and at one point there was 30 people on the line. So a couple of people have dropped off. But I'm going to just say to each one here, the next time we have our meeting, bring somebody else to the table, because we need to build an awareness regarding this project so that we can get success. And the only way that that's going to happen is we need a large group of people, a cadre of people coming forward who feel the need to have this happen, who support us, and not only support us within this community. Okay? Bring your friends, bring your neighbors. When the flyer goes out with the correct information regarding how to get in on this call, share it and tell somebody to come on in and be a part of this revolutionary piece. Because you know, anything that shows up in a good light is a revolution. That's it from me.
I don't know if we've come to the end. But I would say this has been a great, great, great call, a great meeting. And I look forward to seeing everybody on the next one and with a friend, right? So therefore we should have twice or triple the numbers next time. And there's probably going to be folks watching this. Is this going out on the internet as well right now?
Yes, it'll be on YouTube.
Okay, great. Great. That's perfect. So I would say everybody be safe. I know a lot of the places are going against Trump, and people are being told that we should put our face masks on. I think that's a great practice so that we could stem this tide of being #1 in the world now of COVID-19 cases.
Well, thank you, Yusef. And I'd just like to say to everyone, thank you so much for coming. I want to thank our great support person, Ruben Rahman, and Borough President's Office for making this platform available, and all of our wonderful panelists. Thank you so very much. We're going to meet same time next week, and we will get our information out a lot quicker this time. Okay, so thank you, everyone. This has been wonderful, excellent. Thank you, Yusef, for your moderation, and Rebecca for pitching in. Thank you so much.
Karen, can timing on the meeting be like 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock?
If that's more convenient, we could do that.
Thank you.
And I didn't introduce myself. I am chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee at CB10. So just
thank you, Karen. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. So with that, we can end our meeting. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Ruben.
everyone. Have a good night. Enjoy the weekend. Thank you. I'll be promoting. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Come on, girls.